My Weird School Days, Book Number 7. Dr. Brad Has Gone Mad. Written by Dan Gutman. Pictures by Jim Pellot. Pictures by Jim Pellot. Chapter 1. Little Miss Perfect. My name is AJ and I hate school. It was Monday morning. I had just walked into Mr. Granite's third grade class. Everybody was putting stuff into their cubbies. My friends Ryan and Michael were talking about a football game they watched over the weekend. Andrea Young, this annoying girl with curly brown hair, was talking to her friend Emily about jewelry. "Do you like my new necklace?" Andrea asked Emily. "It says love on the back." "It's really shiny," Emily said, "and it goes so nicely with your skirt." "I love to accessorize," Andrea said. "Ugh, girls are so annoying." I didn't even know what accessorize meant, but it was obviously some girly thing that girls do. "Good day, mates," said Mr. Granite. "Take out your reading log." "Reading log? I don't have a reading log. Who wants to read a log? How would you write on a log anyway? I guess you'd have to carve into it with a knife. But how could I carry a log to school? My backpack is heavy enough without having to put a log in there." "I don't have a—" I started to say. "He means your notebook, dumbhead," Andrea whispered to me, rolling her eyes. "I knew that," I lied. "The human homework machine thinks she is so smart. Me and the guys call her Little Miss Perfect. For fun, Andrea reads the dictionary. What is her problem? Why can't a reading log fall on her head?" Actually, I didn't have to take out my reading log after all, because at that moment, the most amazing thing in the history of the world happened. There was a knock on the door. Well, that's not the amazing part, because doors get knocked on all the time. The amazing part was what happened next. "AJ," Mr. Granite said, "will you please answer the door?" "How can I answer the door?" I asked. "Doors don't talk." "I'll do it," said Andrea, rolling her eyes again. Little Miss Perfect opened the door. The school secretary, Mrs. Patty, was standing there. "Mr. Granite," she said, "will you please send AJ to Mr. Klutz's office?" "Ooh!" Everybody oohed. "AJ's in trouble," said Michael, who never ties his shoes. "What did you do this time, AJ?" asked Ryan, who will eat anything, even stuff that isn't food. "Did you rob a bank?" asked Neil, who we call the nude kid, even though he wears clothes. "Maybe you'll finally get kicked out of school, Arlo," said Andrea, rubbing her hands together. "Andrea calls me by my real name because she knows I don't like it." "Your face should get kicked out of school," I told her. I thought about all the bad things that I had done recently. Maybe it was the time I put a worm in Emily's sneaker during recess. Maybe it was the time I wrote "kick me" on a piece of paper and taped it to Andrea's back when she wasn't paying attention. I must have done something really horrible to be sent to Mr. Klutz's office. Bummer in the summer. I wanted to run away to Antarctica and go live with the penguins. Penguins are cool. They never get sent to the principal's office. I walked really slowly down the hall. The slower you walk, the longer it takes you to get anywhere. If you walk slow enough, by the time you get to the principal's office, he might forget the bad thing that you did. So always walk to the principal's office really slowly. That's the first rule of being a kid. Finally, after about 1,100,000 hours, I reached Mr. Klutz's office. I put my hand on the doorknob. I turned the doorknob. I pulled open the door. And you'll never believe the amazing thing I saw in there. I'm not gonna tell you what it was. Okay, I'll tell you. But you have to read the next chapter first. So na-na-na-boo-boo on you. Chapter 2. The Genius. I knew you'd keep reading. When I opened the door to Mr. Klutz's office, Mr. Klutz was in there. Well, duh. Who else would be in Mr. Klutz's office? But that's not the amazing part. The amazing part is what Mr. Klutz was doing in his office. He was playing ping pong with himself. Mr. Klutz had a ping pong table in his office. He would hit the ball, and then he would run around the table to the other side and hit it back. Then he would run around the table and hit it back again to himself. Mr. Klutz is nuts. Hello, AJ, Mr. Klutz said when he noticed I was standing there. Ping pong is great for getting rid of stress. Have a seat. Where did you get a ping pong table? I asked. From Rent a Ping Pong Table, Mr. Klutz replied. You can rent anything. Mr. Klutz was all out of breath from running around the ping pong table. He sat down and asked me about the weather and what I ate for breakfast and other stuff that nobody would ever care about. Principals always make chit-chat before they tell you the horrible thing that you did. Nobody knows why. There was a knock on the door, and Miss Coco came in. She's in charge of the Gifted and Talented program at elementary school. I didn't want to be in the G&T program, but she forced me. Miss Coco made some chit-chat with Mr. Klutz before she sat down. AJ, we need to talk to you about something, said Mr. Klutz. Uh-oh, here it comes. I'm sorry I put the worm in Emily's sneaker, I told them. You put a worm in Emily's sneaker? Asked Mr. Klutz. Of course not, I replied. Whatever gave you that idea? AJ, I called you down here because Miss Coco showed me some of the poems you wrote, Mr. Klutz said. They are very interesting. Interesting is an interesting word. It could mean something is really good Or it could mean something is really bad. You never know. So if you're not sure if something is good or bad, just say it's interesting. Miss Coco handed Mr. Klutz a sheet of paper. He read it out loud. Tomorrow's Window People by Arlo Jervis. Someone only fired should soft become hammer. Imagination, because awkward autumn, sudden neighbor remain. Fishhook, glow shadow oatmeal, tomorrow window people. When he finished reading, the weirdest thing in the history of the world happened. Mr. Klutz and Miss Coco started crying. Tears were running down their faces. What a pair of crybabies. They're worse than Emily. That's the most beautiful thing I ever heard, Miss Coco said. The two of them were sobbing and blowing their noses into tissues. Well, they blew the snot from their noses into the tissues, not the noses themselves. If they blew their noses into tissues, their noses would fall off. That would be weird. The truth is, I didn't even write that dumb poem. My grandma got me some flashcards so I could practice spelling words. We had an assignment to write poetry, and I didn't know what to write. So I threw the flashcards up in the air, scooped them up, and wrote down the words. It was a lot easier than writing real poems. We think your poetry is brilliant, AJ, Mr. Klutz said. We want to have you tested, said Miss Coco. What? Tested? Do I have to pee into a cup? I asked. No, nothing like that, Miss Coco said. AJ, we always knew you were gifted. That's why we put you in the gifted and talented program. We want to have you tested to see if you might be a genius. What? A genius? I'm not a genius. I'm just a regular kid. What kind of test are you gonna give me? I asked. Oh, we're not going to give it to you, Mr. Klutz said. Who will? I asked. And you'll never believe who walked into the door at that moment. Nobody, because if you walked into a door, it would hurt. But you'll never believe who walked into the doorway. It was Dr. Brad, our school counselor. Chapter 3, Dork School. Dr. Brad looks like one of those mad scientists in the movies who straps people to a dentist chair and removes their brain. He's an old guy who wears a bow tie, suspenders, and those weird glasses that only cover one eye. What's up with that? And he has crazy hair, like he put his finger into a light bulb socket. Somebody should get that guy a comb for his birthday. He is scary looking. Dr. Brad isn't like a camp counselor. Camp counselors play games, sing songs, and take you on hikes. Dr. Brad is the kind of counselor who just talks to you, which is no fun at all. Talking is boring, especially when you're talking to grown-ups. Counselors are for kids who are different, like kids who are smarter or dumber than everybody else, or kids who learn faster or slower than everybody else, or kids who have problems, or kids who don't have problems, or kids who are left-handed or colorblind. In other words, counselors are for everybody. So this is the young genius I heard about, Dr. Brad said. He talks funny. Dr. Brad took out a magnifying glass and looked in my eyes. Then he looked in my ears. Then he looked in my mouth. Then he looked up my nose. You can tell if somebody is a genius by looking at their boogers? I asked. That's amazing. Ah ha 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 ha, laughed Dr. Brad. Most amusing. What if I am a genius? I asked. Would that mean I wouldn't have to go to school anymore because I already know everything? No, Dr. Brad said. That would mean we would send you to a special school for genius kids. Did you ever heard of Dirk School, AJ? Asked Ms. Coco. Dirk School? Of course I heard of Dirk School. Everybody in our town knows about Dirk School. We call it Dork School. It's filled with genius dorks. We're afraid that we might be holding you back here at elementary school, Mr. Klutz told me. You always say school is boring. AJ, you're like a young flower, Ms. Coco said. If you went to Dirk, they would water you and give you sunshine to help you grow and bloom. I don't want to be a flower, I yelled. I don't want to get watered. I want to stay here with my friends. Dork School is filled with dorks. I promise I won't say school is boring anymore. Please don't send me to Dork. Please, please, please. Calm down, AJ, said Ms. Coco. Dr. Brad just wants to run a few tests. I didn't want to go to Dork School. I decided that nobody would ever think I was a genius. I wouldn't let them. I want to ask a few questions, AJ, Dr. Brad said. What is 2 plus 2? 5, I lied. Said Dr. Brad. Grown-ups always say when they're thinking. Nobody knows why. How would you spell the word cat? Asked Dr. Brad. D-O-G, I lied. Said Dr. Brad. Who was the first president of the United States? A penguin named Binky, I lied. Said Dr. Brad. What do you think, doctor? Asked Mr. Klutz. This young man is a very interesting subject, Dr. Brad said. Uh-oh, he said I was interesting. That could mean anything. Do you think he might be a genius? Asked Ms. Coco. The poems he has written are very creative. I will need to do further tests, Dr. Brad said. AJ, come with me to room 104. No, not room 104. Room 104 is a mysterious secret room where they put the crazy kids. There are strange sounds and weird machines in there. Everybody says that's where Dr. Brad takes out your brain and puts a monkey brain in its place. When kids go to room 104, they never come out again. I thought I was gonna die.